Before we continue with the show, I just wanted to come on here and show my appreciation for all of you that click on these episodes and listen to them every single week. The Spotify statistics show that over 70% of you guys who listen to these podcasts are not subscribed. And the number one way that you can support the podcast is by pressing that subscribe button. It costs you no money at all, and it takes less than 2 seconds. And it is one of the best ways that we can grow and boost this show so that we can have bigger and bigger guests on and learn more and more. Thank you very much. And let's get right back to the episode.
Welcome to episode 12 of the Passion Lab podcast. Today, I have the great pleasure to be sitting down with Garrett and Jacob Stanford. They are amazing individuals, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to them about their business that they've started. Jacob and Garrett, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jacob, how are you? Hi.
Great. Thank you guys so much for coming on. And I'm super excited to talk to you guys today. So I guess my first question for people who haven't met you guys and don't know you, someone who's listening to this that doesn't know you personally, tell them and tell me even just a little bit about who you are and what you guys do.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're super grateful to be here. Thank you for having us on. Big fan of the show. So me and Garrett, we are creators first and foremost. We often consider ourselves like we do software development, but we consider ourselves kind of artists in that field. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but it's really grounded in what we believe in. We think that there's a lot to be experienced through software, and we've created a company that kind of creates a way for people to be immersed with people's brands in a way that they may have not been able to do otherwise.
Yeah. Any additions, Garrett?
Yeah, no, I think he summed it up great. So basically, yeah, that's kind of who we are. We're a digital creative studio where people that need software or whatever, and they want to express their brand specifically, they come to us and we kind of hash out a strategy plan. We can create a brand kit, and then we try and build something that's really effective for the story that they are trying to tell for their brand. And so we've worked with some great clients already. The Run Strong Coach, who's popular on Instagram, as well as Hoka, the running shoe brand. And then we're doing work for other clients as well. And so it's been a wonderful journey. We've been incorporated for about a year, but doing work for longer than that. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to get a little bit into you guys' background specifically, and even before you guys started this, and to kind of before a year ago. From the little research that I did in the conversations we had before we pressed record, I found out that you guys have been coding for a long, long time, and that, I mean, obviously, as people who develop software and do things like that, you probably, a lot of people maybe in their mind gets the idea that you guys were always glued to the computer or always on your inside, always playing video games as a kid. Take me a little bit into your childhood, your interests, and what growing up was like.
Totally. Yes. Here, do you want to take that, Garrett? Sure. I would say first and foremost that we always tried to blend our passions together. So, for example, we are runners. We were on the track team at BYU. We just finished up that. Of course, we've been running since we were little. And then in addition to that, we found that we really enjoyed programming. So one of the first things that we created when we were little was we made a cross-country video game. It was a computer game. We handed out the CDs to everyone at practice because our teammates were the characters you could play as. And basically you would run through levels and fight bosses and all sorts of crazy stuff. But it was a way for us to kind of express our passions uniquely, like all bundled into a single package. And that's always been true for us. We love to draw, and we love art, and we love athletics, and we love programming. And so what that's kind of resulted is our business, and we love business too, is that we have created something that tries to marry all of those things together. So, for example, that first version of the video game we made as children in middle school and high school, early high school, um, has evolved, and we made multiple versions of it, and then eventually Hoka, the running shoe brand, because we made one that was on the App Store, it ended up being on the top charts of the App Store. Hoka reached out to us asking for a version of it. Uh, um, you could call it like a spin-off that was not us as characters, not as our friends as characters anymore, but as a Hoka running related video game. And so that was one of our first clients that inspired us to incorporate.
That's awesome. Any additions, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Garrett really nailed it. Our background, I would always say that we just love to create stuff. We just love seeing people experience what we've made. And in my opinion, there's no greater vessel for showing your creations or like creating something immersive. There's nothing greater than a video game, because not only are you creating like a canvas or a still image or anything like that, but you're creating an entire world which with potentials to explore. There's lore, there's story, there's hopefully if you create it right, like there's motion, there's activity, like it's a whole world that people get to explore that you've created. And I think that's uniquely significant in software and in video games. And it seems unrelated to like something like a brand document or a website for like a landing page for a company. But actually, in my opinion, it's really not, because you're telling a story of your company and how you've started and where you're going and what your passions are. And that's what's going to get people to be engaged with your product or what you're promoting. So I think that storytelling is intrinsic to software development, and that's just kind of where our passion lies, which is why it's a good fit.
Yeah, I think that's a really unique angle that you have there where, well, first of all, I think it's beautiful that you guys say, well, I can't remember which of you said it, but like there's something, you said it, there's like creativity involved in software development, which is something that I initially didn't think of, and I wouldn't, it's not like when I think of software development, I don't think it's something creative, but in preparation for this episode and just kind of in thinking about what you guys are doing and really trying to kind of immerse myself in, okay, what does a software developer do? I was like, there's something intrinsically, I guess, creative about it, because I mean, I don't know how to code. I'm not that like well versed in the field, but I would assume that when it comes to running into problems and running into roadblocks, you have to find a creative way to get around that roadblock and fix the problem. And I'm sure there's plenty of other ways in which it's creative. As far as that goes, how do you guys speak on, like, other than what I just mentioned, what is a way that you can be creative as a software developer?
Here, why don't I tell you a little story about the development cycle in Hay Bales, which is the game that we just made with Hoka. There was a small issue that was growing into a larger and larger issue during the development, and it's that the GPU on phones was becoming more and more strained because of how intensely well rendered the background level is. So in hay bales, you run on like these grassy plains and you jump over hay bales, kind of the main gameplay. And in our desire to create a really engaging and beautiful world, the GPU is starting to get strained, which means the phones are heated up as you play, which is obviously not what people want. It drains your battery. It causes the game to lag. So that's definitely an issue that needs to be fixed. And so I turn to, all the open source ways to if anyone's encountered a similar problem, we're building on a unique stack. So for the tech people listening, it's a Flutter framework with a Flame 2D game engine, which is notoriously lightweight for things like graphics. It's not normally meant to handle graphics very well, but it does make the game a lot more smooth, which is why we wanted to do it. But I looked around and there wasn't really anything online, and AI was stumped too, which I normally don't turn to as often. But it just couldn't figure. It's like, you did everything you could. Sorry. I'm like, well, this is not able to be released in this state. And as the lead creative developer of this project, we realized it had to get fixed. So what we did was something you wouldn't really imagine what developers want to really do. And you shrink the rendering size. So imagine your phone is this big, you shrunk it to about that big. And then once it rendered, it expands that smaller rendering to fill up the entire screen. So the GPU has around 1/3 of the amount of load that it normally has to do. And now that normally would come at the cost of like, oh, well, what if the graphics suck because of that? But the unique part of Hay Bales is that it's a pixel art video game, so you don't notice it at all. And so that was a creative solution that we really, had to think about. It's like, and that's, maybe people would think of that as technical, probably, and it, in a way it is. But it's not something that you would learn in just typical academics. You have to like exercise thought process, how things are rendered. You have to look at the entire framework as something that's like, a house of cards, and how it's built. So that's kind of an example of how a creative mind can solve the problems. And it did end up solving the problems on most phones. It runs great. So then I'll add to that what we consider, I guess, to be like a creative solution is anything that just takes the book the logical way and adapts it uniquely into certain situations. That adaptation is where kind of a lot of the creativity comes in. That was a great example, but in addition to that, it's a video game, and so we're doing a lot of artworks, we're doing sprite work, we're doing music, we're doing all sorts of things like color theory, and this is true not even just with making. Of course, a video game requires art and creativity. It's a visual medium. This is true as well in terms of other apps and more, I guess, traditional enterprise software. A good example is another app that we're working on. It's called the Run Strong app. We've been working on it. We have a great team of developers as well. I should mention their names now. It's not just the two of us that work at Aether. It's myself and Jacob who started it, and we're kind of the first ones. But now we have 3 other developers: Luke Rundvig, and then the Thompson twins, Davin and Creed. All great. We're all friends from the BYU track team, and one of the things that we had to do with the Run Strong app in terms of creativity, because it's just an app that gives you your training workouts each day. So you wouldn't necessarily imagine there's as much creativity as a video game. But it turns out that even just the organizing of information, how it all has to appear on the screen. It says today's run and how much should it run? What information should it tell you? Which button should you click on in order for it to give more information versus what should just be already appearing, right? Those kinds of questions are inherently creative questions because you're looking at the overall aesthetics of this, of your app screen. And what's been really cool to see is the biggest praise we've gotten for it has been its aesthetic design. Has been just like, hey, this feels really intuitive. I love how beautiful the app looks. Those are things that I think are rare praise, and of course not the only thing that matters when coding, but something that we take a lot of pride in. I think it distinguishes ourselves and the applications we make specifically, is that they are hopefully really beautiful to look at, and that is a distinction, I think, in terms of work that we put out.
Before we get back to the show, I got to tell you about something that has become one of my daily go-tos. It is this cactus hat that I'm wearing on my head right now from Find the Good. Find the Good has very high quality products with a beautiful message to find the good in the world, and I have absolutely loved their products. And that's why I wanted to share with you a promo code that I have from them. It is JacobWhite10. You can head over to findthegoodbrand.com and use promo code JacobWhite10 at checkout to get 10% off of your next purchase there. That is JacobWhite10 at checkout. And let's get right back to the show.
Yeah, I love both of the points you make with kind of trying to find a solution when something failed and hitting a roadblock. But also, to your point, Garrett, when you said an app needs to look good. If an app doesn't look good, it's either going to get frustrating. People aren't going to stay on it for as long. Like there's a lot more than just the behind the scenes and when it comes to developing something like a landing page or an app. And I think that's a beautiful point to talk about, and to go back to what you said, Jacob, that I think a lot of the greatest artists and like what are considered maybe traditional artists decided to do something that was a little bit outside the box, a little bit revolutionary, something that was seen as maybe a little radical. Like if you think about a Picasso or Van Gogh, their style of art was contradictory to the current times, and it developed the entire society. And so I think putting that lens on what you guys are doing as software developers is a really beautiful way to think about maybe on the surface a very technical thing, but it actually is very, very artistic and very creative at its core. I think that's a beautiful point, and not something that I even thought we'd be talking about today all that much. But that's awesome. I'd love to just talk about briefly. Obviously, you guys are twins, and you guys have been growing up your entire lives together. And I want to know, what is it like working on these projects together as twins? You guys have been working on them since you guys were in high school, you said. What is it like working with a twin? What is like the easiest part? What you guys have natural roles that you guys have like continuously fallen into over the last years, and then maybe what are some difficult parts as well?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, because a lot of people don't take into account the fact that we're twins sometimes. It's a very unique life, to be fair, to be a twin. It's I don't think it's like, insanely different from, like a brother or something, but it's very close, as if you just were copied and duplicated, which is cool. A lot of people probably wish that. I think we make our best work, whether that's running like together, whether it's coding, whether it's art, whatever. We always do our best work when we're together. If you look at our best races, we're like right next to each other. So I think there's something like immaterial about that. That's like it can't be boiled down to a science or prediction. If Garrett and I were in a race together, or we're doing a project together, we can do more than the sum of our parts, if that makes sense, right? And I think we realized that kind of early when we started seeing success in running together. Like Garrett actually, funny story, he did sprints in middle school during the track season, and we did cross country together during the cross country season, and I did the distance events during track. So we were like separated during those track seasons. We weren't that good in middle school, and then Garrett decided to finally join me in high school, and we started doing a lot better. And I think it's in no small part due to the fact that now we're able to work together. And we've always been, in collabs with projects. We've been coding, like Garrett said, since we were very little. But before we were able to get our fingers on a keyboard and code something, we were doing big drawing pieces. We made like a Mario Party in real life using, crayons and paper in our basement. And so it was, stuff like that we would work together, and we were able to see that we could do a lot more than what either of us could individually or even combined, right? We were both combined greater than the sum of parts, I think. So, and I'll say too, so when we were at BYU undergrads, we were in the Sandbox program, which is hosted by the entrepreneurship major in the Rollins School, and is kind of this unique 2-year semester program that you can enter into. It's very competitive, and what you do is you basically just build a company with a team of other students. Now, there was so much time spent on finding your co-founder. And the reason for that, and they taught us this, is that having an amazing co-founder that you can contend with, that you can, have great conversations with, also difficult conversations with, and be able to hold each other accountable, is a really difficult relationship to have, especially I would say with friends. And so that's why they almost don't even recommend you be a co-founder with just casual friends. But the relationship of a brother, and a twin brother at that, is that we have this great advantage where we can hold each other accountable to basically hold each other up to a bar that's really difficult for just other people to hold each other up to. Simply because of the fact that it can be kind of mean to hold someone up to seemingly an impractical standard, but you can demand that from your twin brother in a way that just doesn't exist in other relationships. And so that has been a great strength for us. And it's something that allows us to make decisions a lot faster. It allows us to have arguments a lot faster. Sometimes we disagree on the direction of how something will go, and we'll be able to just lay out our points. It's a lot easier for us to kind of keep our friendship out of it, become business partners for a second, because we both have that lasting relationship that came from being brothers our whole lives, that we know that both of us are speaking in the interest of our broader goals together. And so basically, it's allowed us to be incredibly efficient, incredibly effective, and contend with each other, which ultimately spirals us up faster and faster. So.
Yeah, I think that's a unique strength to be able to have in a business partner, because I guess that brotherly relationship and twin brother, like you said, is so strong, and so you guys have learned for all these years how to compartmentalize almost you guys' relationship into, okay, like, this is not going to ruin our relationship. This is a difficult conversations we get to have, and it's going to improve us. I think that's a good framework for a lot of business owners to think about when approaching a conversation. And I think something that you guys are very lucky to have, being brothers. As it goes, I guess starting a business, maybe business is something you guys had to learn a little bit more than developing software and coding and things like that. How has your relationship with taking something that you guys really enjoy and then turning it into something that's a business, that transition from something like that you're passionate about into something that you do full time can sometimes, for some people, kind of ruin that relationship? How have you guys been able to stay passionate about it as you guys have been pursuing this as a business?
That's a really good question, I think, because it's something that I don't think you can ever that you ever won't struggle with, because this always started as a passion project. And so the challenge there is, if I do it too much, or if there's money on the line, or if there's stakeholders on the line, am I going to lose that passion? What's been really fascinating for both Jacob and I, and I'm truly saying this because it's true, is that we can both code all day long. We love it. And we can do it for like years. And the only thing that can get us away from our computer is our wives, our family, and running, which are good things to keep the balance. And I'll say this about it too, is that finding those balances, having other interests, is really important too. Being able to have that time every morning where we don't have to be right on our computer, and we're out for a run. It allows me to just kind of reset, refocus, and take a step back on the broader goals of what we're trying to do. The same goes for when when either of us are hanging out with our wives or on a date or whatever. Not that I'm thinking about it during the date, or trying not to, but because it allows that mental refresh, that refocus. You have to have those. But at the same time, there are times when work demands, as an entrepreneur, and many of your guests know this, Jacob, is that like it's gonna take an incredible amount of work to get off the ground. And so to love it is really important, and to remember why you love it is important. There are specific parts of coding that I do not love, like pull requests and app submissions, working with invoicing with companies. So I try to get back to the magic as often as possible. And that magic is what's on screen and what's the user experience feel like. Is it really smooth when a button is clicked and it loads the next page? That's the magic for me that I love to chase, and that's my dopamine hit. So if I can get that magic as often as possible, then it's a really good thing. And then maybe Jacob can answer more about how like running the business goes and things like that with software, because we've had to pick up a lot of business operation skills separate from just development. So that's been really cool too. So yeah, I can definitely speak to that. It's really cool that Garrett and I, so we actually were in the same classes up until our junior year, which is when in the business school at BYU, you have to kind of decide which, piece of the business operations that you want to be an expert in. And Garrett decided to pursue strategy, and I decided to pursue information systems, which, if you don't know, is very similar to just computer science, but it's got that business lens attached to it. Um, and that was really cool that we had professional. It was what I said earlier. It's kind of like you cloned yourself and went to a different expertise. So then we were able to come back from each of those programs, and they were both very rigorous and challenging programs. And Garrett was like, I have all this skill set that I've acquired from business strategy that I wouldn't have otherwise had. And I was able to come back from information systems, and, same thing. I had a skill set that I definitely wouldn't have had if I wasn't in that core. So that was super cool. And it's super useful now that we're able to be humble enough to listen to each other in certain situations. I listen to Garrett a lot about things like, how are we going to position this? What's the market fit? What's the competitive edge? Which are all strategy relevant questions. And then for me, with information systems, in my background, we do a lot of data management. So I talk a lot about how we're going to, which type of backend are we going to use? Are we going to use Firebase, AWS? Which one is the most efficient for the project? And are we going to do an RDS, a relational database, or are we going to do something different? And that's kind of what we're each able to bring to the table, which is super cool. As co-founders, that allows us to have a wider set of skills than what either one of us would have had. But I will point out, as I'm explaining this, it's becoming important to me, or I'm realizing how important the humility is to listen to people that know more than you, which we're also not doing with just ourselves, but also the three other developers, Luke, Davin, and Creed, we brought on. We brought them on not just because, we're expanding, we have more clients, but because they have certain expertise that we don't. And humbling all of, our whole team and listening to each other talk about what they're best at. That's why we brought them on, and they've been fantastic. So
I love that. I think you guys both mentioned it, that the humility that it takes to be a business owner and work with your employees and with each other as co-founders. I think business is filled with a lot of ego because we want to be right, and we want to know that we want to have our ideas be right and not have our pride be shot. But I think that you guys obviously from the very beginning have had this attitude, and maybe you guys have learned along the way through different experiences. But I think that's an incredible lens to view business relationships and as co-founders and as brothers. I do have one question, kind of regarding AI, and I don't know like how much AI is integrated with the work you guys are doing right now. But I guess like with the wake, and it's kind of a twofold question. And I guess one question is like with like the wake of artificial intelligence, a lot of like these owners of these $1 trillion companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, they've harped on and kind of commented on over the last couple of years that more and more the entry level jobs, especially knowledge level jobs that are entry level, have the opportunity to be lost in the next couple of years due to AI. Is that a motivation that you guys have because of what you guys are building? Obviously, something personally. Is that a motivation that you guys have had? And then also, how is AI changing the landscape that you guys are working in?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So AI right now is huge. It's definitely changing the landscape. I was in the information systems junior core during the year 2024 and 2025. And that's when things started to really pick up and really start getting crazy. And that's when AI started become a lot more integrated to software development specifically. it was kind of like at first when OpenAI released ChatGPT in 2021 or 2022, and people started becoming more aware of it. It was like a mile wide and an inch deep. AI was good at a lot of different things, only an inch deep, and it wasn't that good much more than that first inch. So that's kind of where it sat for a while, and then people, I think, started realizing, whoa, AI is really useful for coding, which is fantastic. I actually think for things that don't require that immediate creative lens, AI is amazing. It's an amazing tool. And I think that the companies that learn to leverage AI best are going to be the ones that are the most successful in the next 5 years. The market's going to become crazy saturated with a lot of vibe coded startup projects, but what a lot of these people lack is that creative vision. They kind of just tell it to create something because they know it's easy to do right now, but you can tell something's just Tailwind CSS and just no thought was put into the buttons, no thought was put into the layout, no thought was put into what information's on screen, graphics, anything like that. And that's going to become, and I think a lot of people's mind, maybe it's not so apparent right now, but as that sort of mid product is going to become more and more, everywhere, people are going to realize it, and they're going to start turning to people that have real creative proclivities for things that are, what a lot of developers in the past maybe thought as trivial, like UI design and layout and things like, and graphics and animations and, haptics, feel. So things that are a lot more tied emotively rather than, the qualitative data that the product normally, that, software development is normally known for, just because, it was hard enough to get the website deployed. Why worry so much about how it looked? Software devs are notoriously only caring about performance, which is great and super important. But people are starting to come to the realization that, I can create something in 30 seconds. I can ask ChatGPT to make a website right now, and it will do it, and it will do a pretty good job at it. And it's definitely a lot better than what most software devs, at least entry level, would have been able to do in a couple months just a couple years ago, right? So what's going to need to happen is that software developers are going to need to become more creative, and they're already pretty creative, but they're going to need to really step up their game if they want to stay ahead of the curve, because people are going to start realizing when their stuff is made only with AI. I'll just throw a quick other point in there. For the longest time, design, web design, graphic design, all of that was considered for our entire lifetime up until AI. It's a completely separate discipline from computer science. Well, with AI, those two disciplines now have to converge, because there is no market for it anymore, for just being one or the other. AI can do both really well. What it can't do super well yet still, and we'll see, is the ability to put both of those things together. Because what Jacob mentioned is true. Software developers can do stuff really efficiently. They can make functionality really great. Those are some of the skills that are not intuitive and not necessarily something you learn to a designer. There's a meme that goes around, and it says that a designer's dream is a software developer's nightmare. The problem is that industry is merging, and so they have to be able to come together. Right there in the middle is where we like to position ourselves. We think that is the future of software development, and that's why we're starting now with it, before we actually see any of those industry changes. And if you don't mind, Jacob, I'll say one more thing about it, just real quick. For anyone that needs to learn how to do UI design, or maybe they're a software dev, or maybe they want to get into it and they're unsure how to make something that stands out, something that Garrett and I did in our earliest days and still do today is we just get a blank sheet of paper and a pencil. And I don't care if your artistic skills are bad. I just grab my phone and I put it on the paper and I trace the outline, and then I imagine, okay, where does the Where does the HUD go? Where does the nav bar go on the bottom? How big are all the buttons? And I just draw it. And that way you do it purely emotively. You're not thinking about the technical stuff. You're not thinking about anything like that yet. Just what is the best experience if I was a user? Where would I want to click? What wouldn't I want to click, and why? And that is my biggest piece of advice for anyone starting out. The companies that learn how to leverage that creative skill and the tools that AI is using, because it's not going away. It's definitely going to be part of development. It's just different now. Like, we have to accept that. The companies that leverage all the tools available to them, those are the ones that are going to be successful. And that's what we're trying to do too. So
I love that. I think it's incredible that as you guys start your career, you guys are very fresh out of college. I think it's amazing that as you guys are starting, you guys already are thinking of where we can position ourselves, because we see this thing happening, and where can we position ourselves when these two converge, that we shoot up to the top. And I think that's a very amazing strategic move that you guys are making. And I love hearing that, and it's really cool, because it's at least a space that I don't know much about AI. I don't know how it's affecting everyone's world. I know it's affecting everyone's world to some extent. But I think it's amazing, the force that you guys have. I have only a couple more questions, because I know you guys have a time crunch, but to me, it's very apparent that you guys are very passionate about the things that you guys are doing and the things that you're building. And I'd love just to hear from you guys, maybe quickly, if you guys think that the passion that you guys have, and just passion in general, is something that you build, or something more that you discover, or maybe a mix of the two.
That's a really good question, and it's not one I've thought much about before, but I definitely, as you say, it makes intuitive sense, because it's 100% something that, well, I'll give you an analogy actually before I give my answer. In racing, in track and field, we just finished with BYU. I did the steeplechase. Jacob did the 10K primarily. We both did cross country. We had the great pleasure of being coached by one of the greatest coaches in NCAA history, Coach Ed Eyestone. And he had a saying, and he says, step one is to race your plan, and then to abandon the plan during the race. And the same is true with software development. It's absolutely something that you discover, but with the giant asterisks, with a lot of planning as well. And then be prepared to ditch and abandon all of that planning for something that feels more intuitive. A quick example, we had the great privilege of building an inventory tracker for a subset of CYU's programs for faculties. They needed an inventory tracker because they were using Google Sheets. It wasn't necessarily intuitive for new employees. It couldn't do all the features that you might want from an inventory tracker, just a spreadsheet. So building that out, one of the first things we did was we built what we thought they needed as an inventory tracker. And then we showed it to them. We walked in the warehouse and we walked through each of the steps of how to track their inventory with them. And Jacob, I'll tell you, we found so many things that we needed to change our initial plan, because a lot of what is great about software is that it's flexible. You can change it surprisingly fast, but also it's used by users, and the whole goal of it is for it to fit the mold that the users need. So there were all sorts of things that they wanted that made their lives easier, and that made the software actually better for it. And for us, as people that don't track inventory on a daily basis, to learn that experience was really insightful. So we came in with a plan. We employed good design principles, but then it turns out, some of these buttons don't need to be used because they would never press those. But the ones that are hidden in like 8 menus, in a giant hierarchy, those ones they use every day. For example, Jacob was watching them track inventory, and they needed to use a calculator. So they would just in the search bar, type in 120,000 times 8 or something like that. And we're like, well, we could just throw in a little calculator widget in the bottom screen of your inventory trackers. It's those little efficiencies that make software great, that make it really thoughtful. And so, long story short, you make a plan and then you discover it. And it's most of that discovery that actually ends up being the final product.
I love that. Yeah. Any other thoughts that you want to add on, Jacob? Or
yeah, I would say the ability to pivot is important in everything you do, but especially if you're two things: a runner, like a racer, and if you're a business owner. Those are the two places where pivoting is absolutely crucial. Because like what Garrett said, sometimes you plan your race and this guy's doing something different than we thought he was, and my whole race plan was to stay in the back or lead or whatever. And you got to pivot, like learning to pivot, putting yourself in good position. That is, I mean, if you watch the mile or the 1500 in like the world championships or the Olympics, all they care about is position, because that's what wins the race. They all got good legs. They all got good sprints. They can outkick most anyone. But it's their position relative to their skill set that all those best elite racers care about. And that's the same thing with a company. It's your position, like how are you in the minds of your consumer, versus your skill set, like, okay, what can we do? Do we have good distribution chains? Do we have quality standout product? Or are we kind of like more of like a simple product that you can market to more people? You got to figure out what your position is and what your skill set is. And then that's where you converge and you find the best strategy for your company. And that is a little bit of race tactics for the listeners as well. So,
yeah, I love that. I think those are great answers that you guys just gave. And I'd like to just move on kind of to the final question that I'd like to ask everyone. I think you guys have been incredibly insightful, and I've loved everything you guys have shared today. And I know that as the people listening, they're going to learn a lot from you guys. I've learned a lot through this conversation. And the last question, I asked the same question to every single guest at the very end, and it is, if you guys had the opportunity, to anyone who's listening to this, no matter what stage of life they're at, if they had the desire to start something new, a passion, a hobby, a business, or whatever, what would your advice be for them to start that passion?
Love that question, because I mean, there's so much opportunity right now, it feels like, in our industry with AI, but in any industry. And so to those people that are wondering if now is a good time to start, or if they should wait for X or Y, you got to start now. Start today, not even tomorrow. Tomorrow is the same as saying next year. You got to start right now. And I know how challenging that is. For example, it never felt like we always wanted to start a company. This was like to be formed as Aether Technologies. Now is like 5 years of us saying eventually we will do that. And I wish I just said that we should do it right now, like go to the bank and open up a bank account right now for our company, and file the LLC. It really isn't as much legwork as you'd think it would be, as some people might believe. And then once you have it, now you have it. And now you have at least a little bit of a responsibility to do that every day. And if you just take those little steps, that responsibility and that motivation grows naturally, because that's what's tricky about relying on just purely motivation rather than a responsibility that you're setting up for yourself, because motivation comes and goes. And so what lasts longer is building up the walls around you that say, no matter how I feel, I got to do it today. And you do that by starting. You do that by creating your first thing, or sending that first email and saying, hey, in our case, I could code something for you. You want to talk? And then from there, your excuses start to dwindle because you can't come up with any. So that is why it's so important to start as soon as possible. Yeah, I would say passion is greater than motivation. It's greater than every one of your like fleeting desires to do something. Because, if you're in it for the money or whatever, if you're in it for like just the short-term gain, you're going to be blown. You're like the winds of trials are going to knock you down so fast. The key to being proactive enough to actually do something about your life is by being passionate about it. And that's, I hope we were able to convey that passion to you, Jacob, and to the listeners, that we really love it. I mean, imagine a world where, you can do whatever you want and money's not really like a factor. What would you do, right? And obviously some people, they will say nothing. It's like, okay, fair enough. And then do nothing. But for some people, it's like, well, I want to run. Find a way to make that happen. Like, it's not impossible. Nothing's impossible. And maybe it's not in the lens that, is the most ideal. Like, not everyone can be a pro runner. Not everyone can even be a CEO or a co-founder. But everyone can find something that, they're passionate about. And maybe you got to work on the side a little bit to make it happen. It's just, if you're really passionate about it, you'll make the ends meet. Like, that's just how it goes. So I think in this world, passion is getting lost. People are losing the desire to do, what they do every day. And that's really sad. So I really appreciate, this podcast and that kind of, that message we can bring. So.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I've really appreciated what you guys have shared today. I love those last 2 points that you guys make, that you never know what's going to happen until you send that email, you ask those questions, or you just end up doing it. I think that's been kind of the story of what my experience has been. I've been able to talk to people that I would have never guessed I would have ever been in the same room as. I mean, the most recent example is Chris Chavez. Like, I didn't think that was a person. I kind of sent that email very wishfully thinking and saying, oh, like maybe he'll end up seeing this, but no, I got to sit down in the same Zoom call with him and have that conversation. And I think, to you guys' point, it just takes a little bit of action, and when you're truly passionate about it, things will happen in the end. So thank you so much, Jacob and Garrett. I've really appreciated being able to talk with you guys today. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for listening. And this has been episode 12 of the Passion Lab.